All right, it is another episode of Viva on the Street. Tonight, it is not with Pudge, it is with Winston. Winston, what do you say? Yeah. It is February 10th, and I am, again, out on the street unlawfully, but for the dog, because I predicted it a month ago. If the numbers did not go down, I predicted they would extend the curfew because we have to get those numbers down. And if the numbers did go down, they would extend the curfew because the numbers are going down. Lo and behold, the numbers are going down, either related or totally unrelated to the curfew, but they are still extending the curfew throughout the province. Now, outside of certain red zones, I think they're in the orange zones, the curfew has been extended, as in made until 9:30 in the evening. So outside of the red zones, you can leave your house until 9:30, and then after that, you have to go back inside until 5 in the morning. There's another dog down the street here. We're going to see him in a second. In Montreal, in the red zones, you're still not allowed out of the house between 8 in the evening, hello doggy, and 5 in the morning, unless you have a dog. So the curfew has been extended, surprise, surprise. You might be looking at this snazzy haircut. Are you looking at the haircut? You're not looking at the haircut. Do you see the haircut? You see the haircut. You might be looking at this haircut and saying, well, Viva, if the curfew's been extended, how did you get your haircut lawfully? I got my haircut lawfully because they have extended the curfew, but they have graciously reopened non-essential, and I just don't have my fingers, non-essential businesses. So people can get their haircut. People can hopefully buy socks in pharmacies. People can hopefully buy pantyhose and hair dye. And for those of you who think that when I do these Viva on the Streets, I just walk outside and randomly start rambling, I take notes every now and again, and I've taken notes tonight. On the notes for the evening, border crossings. Okay, so in the last few Viva on the Street updates I've done, I was talking about the international flight restrictions, and I do want to be clear about those. There has been apparently some delay of the rollout of the restrictions, but the restrictions are nonetheless being rolled out, and that is that all international flights coming into Canada can only land in 4 locations: Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal. When you are arriving on an international flight, you will have to show a negative COVID test upon arrival taken within 72 hours of arrival. You will apparently still have to take a COVID test upon arrival. If your COVID test is negative, you would still have to quarantine for 2 weeks in a proper quarantine place, home or wherever. By the way, and pending the results of the test, you would have to stay in a government-approved hotel at a cost of up to $2,000 pending the results. If your results are negative, you can go home and quarantine at home for the next 2 weeks. If your results are positive, you would then have to go to a government-designated quarantine facility for an undisclosed time at an undisclosed location. And if anybody thinks I'm exaggerating about the undisclosed location, we have now had 2 documented, confirmed situations in which 2 people were hauled off upon arrival and having tested positive on the spot to undisclosed locations of designated quarantine facilities. One was Nikki Mathis, and the other was a son of someone named Rebecca McDonald. Now, when I first mentioned this in a tweet a few days ago, I said that her son was 9 years old, and her son was not 9 years old. Her son was 20 years old. Nonetheless, upon arrival from Arizona, hauled off to a government-designated quarantine facility without being told where he was going. His mother was not being told where he was going. And these are 2 documented cases, and there are more, from what I understand. So when anyone says this is all hypothetical and this is all fear-mongering conspiracy theory reported only on Rebel News, it might only be reported on Rebel News. It doesn't mean it's fear-mongering conspiracy theory. It might actually be true, but no one else is reporting on it. So that's the international flight restrictions. The news? Apparently, these rules are going to be imposed at the road border crossings. Now, that might be a step up because the border crossings have been closed to non-essential travel for the last year. Just so everybody appreciates, I have family in the United States. I have a sister and a brother and a sister-in-law and a brother-in-law, nieces and nephews, an aunt and an uncle. I have cousins in the United States. I haven't seen them in a year, nor do I plan on seeing them anytime soon because I know what is going to be awaiting me when I come back, if I go, which I'm not going, so I'm not coming back. Bottom line, I'm not taking a chance at being hauled off to an undisclosed location of a government quarantine facility because I might get accurately or inaccurately tested positive for COVID upon my return. So all that to say is I have family members in the United States whom I have not seen in a year as a result of all of this. My siblings have not seen my parents in a year, but that's a separate issue. So these testing measures are now going to be imposed at the road borders, where you're going to have to show a negative test within 72 hours of having crossed the border. That's the border issues. What's going on in the courts? Because everyone wants to know where the courts are. The courts are the last refuge of justice, n'est-ce pas? We knew that there was a court case out of Gatineau. The lawyer who was contesting the curfew measures being imposed by the government. His name doesn't matter. You can Google it. It really doesn't matter. But he filed, it was called a motion for judicial review. And he sought a safeguard order, which is like a temporary restraining order, an injunction, to declare at the very least some measures of the curfew measures to be unconstitutional, in that there was no logical correlation between the measures and the objectives sought, especially given our health director Horacio Arruda's own admission that there is no concrete scientific evidence to show the effectiveness of curfews. Whatever. His motion to seek these curfew measures to be declared unconstitutional was very short. It was a 4 or 5 page judgment. I covered it. Well, the judgment was not as short, but pretty short, and it dismissed his motion. It basically said when it comes to a safeguard order, the criteria is that of a temporary injunction, provisional injunction. You have to show color of right, balance of inconvenience, likelihood of success on the merits, and as far as the judge was concerned, the plaintiff, the petitioner, who is a lawyer, who sought to declare these curfew measures unconstitutional, did not allege sufficient irreparable harm. The judge concluded that the allegations for irreparable harm were scarce at best, and that there were no allegations or evidence of irreparable harm, because all that was alleged was that the individual's fundamental civil rights were restricted, and charter rights were restricted between 8 in the evening and 5 in the morning. And the judge said in the judgment, we give deference to government officials under emergency circumstances. You didn't allege irreparable harm, and the laws are presumed constitutional from the get-go. Now, how did the judge get around his decision in this case and the decision that recently came out of Quebec as relates to the Hasidic Jewish community, who obtained a favorable order as relates to restrictions on gatherings in rooms of limited to 10 people? Or how did the judge reconcile this decision with the same judge who rendered a decision in the other homeless person lawsuit, where they declared the curfew measures unopposable, unconstitutional as relates to homeless people? Well, the judge said in those cases they alleged irreparable harm. The allegations were there. In this case, they weren't. Every case is always a case-by-case basis, and all it takes is one different fact to justify diametrically opposed conclusions in lawsuits. So that's where we're at. We have had 2 relatively favorable decisions, for lack of a better word, coming from the same judge in Montreal. One non-favorable decision coming from the judge in Gatineau, who basically says having your charter rights violated by curfew, because that's what it is not in and of itself an irreparable harm, and that further irreparable harm needed to be alleged in the lawsuit. That is where we are with the Viva on the Street updates. Winston, what do you say? Dude has no idea where he is, and actually, neither do I. That is where we are. So the courts, some are moving, some are not moving. The government moving, not necessarily in the right direction. Quebec, non-essential businesses are open. I got a haircut today. I had a massively long discussion, not only with the guy cutting my hair, another person getting their haircut. The funny thing is, a lot of people feel the same way, and all it takes is about 2 minutes of discussion with them in a relatively private setting in order for people to express themselves, and a lot more people feel the same way than you would otherwise think based on the way the media is reporting it. The media is reporting that something like 89% of Quebecers approve of these lockdown curfew measures. I'm not convinced. And I talk to a lot of people. So with that said, that's where we are right now. This is Winston. I'm going to go tickle some pee-pee out of Pudge. For anybody who watches the Viva on the Street, you know what I'm talking about. stay optimistic, stay vigilant, keep protecting your rights. Your rights exist for a reason. The courts, they work sometimes, they work slowly sometimes, but like I always say in all of my videos, do not let the circumstances radicalize you, because that is when the circumstances dominate you as opposed to you dominating the circumstances. All right, people, peace out, stay well, and last word, Winston, adorable.